Come into the studio. Special guest here, Uriah McClain. I know a lot of you high school fans have probably seen him around at football games, basketball games, all that kind of stuff. He's been doing a lot of work with area high school athletes in terms of the recruiting process and a lot of the academic side of things and how all that stuff plays out. So welcome into the show, Uriah.
Thank you very much for having me, Dave.
Step up to that microphone. Don't be shy here.
All right.
Tell us a little bit more about yourself. Give us a little bit of background for people who don't know you in the area.
I started out teaching in Pleasantville, New Jersey. Had some success, coaching over at Holy Spirit, the 06 team, the 07 team. After we won that championship, I was fortunate enough to secure a position in Morristown, New Jersey. Coached there for a few years. The process there was a little bit different than working with kids in Pleasantville and the Atlantic County area. So I was able to work with a few students, athletes, one of them who actually ended up at UPenn, the quarterback Andrew Lisa.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, I just went into the private side as far as business is concerned because, quite frankly, I saw a big need for student athletes, whether they were rich, poor, or indifferent. It was really just one of those deals where I saw that there was a need, and I wanted to help. As a coach and as an academic, I wanted to do that for them.
Now, were you an athlete growing up?
I was, but at 5'6", you know that your future is not going to be very long.
Right.
So my whole thing was I always knew that coaching was going to be in my future. I was passionate about football, and like I said, I was fortunate to play football with guys like Will Green and watch guys like Dave Klemick and those locals kind of grow up. So for me, I was always a fan of the game, and like I said, I knew that my path was going to be more on the coaching side.
Right. Yeah, I'm about 5'6" myself. I like to say I'm listed at 5'7". So probably in shoes I'm 5'7", the winter boots anyway. But we're talking with Uriah McClain, who does a lot of work here with area high school athletes in terms of getting them ready for college and all that stuff. Uriah, what went into going into the private sector? Teaching is a very good job. It's hard for some people to leave that and take that risk and go out on their own. Was there any trepidation about that?
Absolutely. I had just received tenure in Morristown, which is for a lot of people would be their dream job.
Sure, yeah.
It was a great district. Everything was pretty kind of surreal, especially coming from Pleasantville. So for me, it was really hard to walk away because the coaching position was there, the teaching position was there, and everything was great. However, I just saw, like I said, a huge need for local athletes that really just didn't know the process. I knew the vast majority weren't going to make it to college as far as Division I or even II scholarships.
Uh-huh.
But that didn't mean that they couldn't chase that dream. It's not up to me to say you can or cannot make it. For me personally, it was more about getting them prepared for the opportunity. And should they be offered, I would be there to help them and support them in whatever way they needed me to. And fortunately, I was able to work on the academic side as well as the athletic.
Now, what went into starting up this idea? We talked a little bit during the break about P10 and what you have going on with that. What was the process in terms of starting all that and getting all your thoughts together to something that would be not only beneficial to people but beneficial to you as a private business? And really, how long did it take to get everything kind of squared away and in line?
Well, the summer I left teaching, it was really that spring I had contemplated leaving. I was working with a quarterback, Andrew Lisa, at Morristown, and I was working with a guy that you may know, Tony Graneri.
Sure, yeah.
He was working with quarterback. We created Quarterback University together, and what ended up happening was I went into Oceanside over down the street here and approached the owner, and the owner was talking to me about a program that they had worked on called The Power of 10. Dave Klemick, John Stone had started that program there, and they asked if I wanted in. So when I got there, the program was really more athletically based. As a teacher, of course, I saw the immediate implications for the academic side, and so that process really got sped up when Steve Rubino decided to put some money behind that and really develop it as an academic program that eventually we saw going into athletic facilities like Oceanside and other Parisi academies and places like that, and also then spinning it into the classroom. So locally, I work at Holy Spirit High School and the Greater Egg Harbor District as a whole with the program P10, and again working in both sides of things. The process was slow, but it was really kind of rewarding because I learned a lot about business along the way. And like I said, as a teacher, you don't really get to see that side oftentimes. So I've been fortunate.
What was the most challenging thing right off the bat in terms of going from a teaching position where you have security. You're on the clock. You have your certain hours, all that stuff. Now you go in, to business sort of on your own. It's a whole different ball game, right?
Sure is. The biggest hurdle, to be quite honest with you, was the football coaches. You come into a football program and they know that you worked at this school and this school. They kind of look at you suspiciously. They don't want you stealing their information. They don't want you, working with their kids unless they know you really well.
Uh-huh.
And so, fortunately for me, my the first high school that I ended up working with was Holy Spirit, and my relationship with Coach Walsh and Coach Roman, that was essential to making that happen. And then the second one was over at Cedar Creek with Mike McGee and Tim Watson. They were the ones that really kind of helped get me on board. And that trust and that relationship was really essential to making that happen.
Right. Where can people find more information about what you're doing?
They can check us out on p10course.com. There's some information online. The program's still going in different schools in South Jersey. Budgets have been a concern for a program like mine, and I know that Atlantic County is being hit kind of hard with that right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the frustrating part about being in business. When you're a teacher, the clients come to you.
Yep.
When you're on the private side, you're out there hustling and trying to make a name for yourself and showing people that you do care about their kids. And over time, that's happened. And so for the last 4 years, it's all about building relationships in the local area.
We're talking with Uriah McClain, former teacher, former coach in the area, who's now kind of going out on his own a little bit here to help kids sort of navigate the recruiting process and just the process of getting into college, which can be quite daunting. I know, working for Glory Days Magazine, I'm out there at games every day and talking to parents a lot, and I've heard, throughout the entire school year, just how difficult it is for parents to sort of navigate this process. I mean, you're just getting overwhelmed with information and all kind of stuff that college coaches are saying. What's been the reaction of parents who you've worked with? How much do they know about the process and how much should they know about it?
They know very little about the process. It's really kind of almost like veiled in secrecy, A lot of times they hear a story of a friend that had a kid that went D1 once, and they think that they know the process. In reality, that athlete was a superstar. He was going to go no matter what he did, right or wrong, and they kind of make that happen. But when you look at the average student athlete, the one that's kind of on the cusp of being a Division III player perhaps, or Division 1A, or whatever you want to call it, they know very little about the NCAA clearinghouse, which requires you to have a specific GPA in core subjects. And those types of terms they're not familiar with. They don't understand. This coach called my house the other day and clearly is interested in my kid. Now the offer is going to be on its way. Well, they're just,
they think there's going to be an offer in the mail like 2 days later. Right?
Absolutely, and they don't realize that college coaches are masters of the showroom. They know what to say to you to get you interested, but they also know that there's 10 other kids just like you that they're looking at, and they want to look for a fit. Do you have the home background that they're looking for? Do you have the academic skills they're looking for? Can you make it in that environment? If you're from Atlantic City and you decide to go to somewhere out in the middle of Ohio, you might struggle out there.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's not. Those are the types of things that I try to educate parents on, where this money's coming from, telling them that it's not a 4-year scholarship. It's a 1-year renewable. If you don't perform, they can pull that scholarship. These are things that they're not aware of. You know, unfortunately, I was exposed early on with the process with, William Washington and guys like Marcus Witherspoon, and who had a rough go at it, and so fortunate for me, I was using those experiences to kind of educate parents on how this thing can play out, even when you are a superstar athlete.
We're going to get a little bit more into that after the break, and we're going to have another segment here with Uriah, because I think this is an important issue to kind of address, especially as we have kids who are entering their senior year. A lot of these kids haven't figured out where they're going to be going to college in 2016. Give us a little bit of a breakdown real quick of your program, how it works, maybe some of the key points that you go over with parents and students in your program.
Sure. Some of the things that we talk about very specifically are time management, goal setting, nutrition, for obvious reasons. A lot of kids, when I talk about time management, they think they have that down. But what they realize is that somebody has always told them where to go, where to be, and they have no idea how to set goals and align your time with those goals. So part of it is like scheduling their day with them on a very basic level, and then getting into the nutritional aspect of it, what you need to do to fuel your body as an athlete. And then we talk about mental toughness. I use the Navy SEALs as the example because they actually have a program to develop that type of mental toughness needed to overcome adversity. I don't know if you look at kids today, but I think that you and I could probably agree that these kids aren't the grittiest. They don't have a lot of no's in their life, and that's the thing when I'm talking about college. Listen, you better get used to hearing no and rejection.
Right.
It's like a beauty pageant. Not everybody's going to be the winner, but it's only for a select few. So my program, we talk about how to overcome these things, but also how to develop as an athlete and as an academic. A lot of people look at the processes as two separate entities, but the truth is that athletes go along the same kind of path as academics do, meaning they put time into things that they love and they develop a skill and develop the talents that they were born with. And I believe that they develop that over time.
Right. Getting back to the whole transition from high school to college, I played high school baseball, wasn't recruited at all, really. Went to a college my freshman year, didn't make that team, transferred to Pfeiffer University in North Carolina as a sophomore, ended up as a walk-on. But even as, I was basically the third-string second baseman as a sophomore, even that without really playing every game, it was kind of a shock to me. Just, it's a whole different world in college. It's like having a job. I mean, you have 2-a-days in January. You're going from 5 to 7 in the morning at practice. You're going to class from 8 to 2. You got another practice from 2:30 to 6. I had an on-campus job as part of my financial aid package. You get home at 10 at night. Now you got homework. I mean, it's very overwhelming. My sophomore year, I ended up with a 2.1 GPA, and it wasn't because I was slacking on my grades. It was just, so that playing a sport takes so much out of you, energy-wise. A lot of times you just didn't have the energy to finish that homework that night or whatever. And road trips, 3-hour road trips where you're missing classes, it really does get to be a lot. I lost 15 pounds that first year. And it was funny. I come home in May, and my mother said, "Geez, aren't they feeding you down there, Dave?" I said, "Mom, I'm eating 4 times a day. We're all over the place. We're traveling every weekend. We got $4 meal money on the road, so we weren't exactly eating high nutritional meals." Talk about that a little bit, and just about how different it is from high school to college in terms of being an athlete.
These students these student athletes need to understand one thing: these college coaches are businessmen. They're in to further their careers. A lot of these guys are not going to stay at the university that they were recruited to go to much longer. They're always looking to kind of move into a better situation. And so when they look at these athletes, and the thing they forget is that when they first are recruited, they get a lot of love. They're showered with love and attention. The second that they sign, you and I both know everything changes.
Yeah.
You literally become a commodity, and they want you to start producing day one. They're not waiting to develop you. They're looking for better athletes, better trained athletes now. It really is a lot more serious. And the thing that you talked about is the time constraints on you. Like Rutgers University, they get applauded for having this program in which so many kids are graduating. But what you don't know is that there's 3 or 4, graduate assistants chasing them around campus, making sure they're in class on time, having, TAs come in and teach them the information that they missed while they were away on road trips. I went to Rutgers with a lot of baseball players. Those guys were never in class. And I always used to wonder, how do you have a 3.0 GPA and you're never in class? And the joke of it was that they have teachers traveling with them, and they really do. So
yeah, I mean, well, you're talking about baseball. You're playing 55, 60 games in a spring semester, which is only 4 months long.
Yeah, and the grind has to be unreal for them.
They're traveling to Florida, Texas, all over the place.
You're semi-pro at that point, and it's really, you're getting a tryout for the next level. And a lot of these guys are chasing that dream, and in the process, what goes to the wayside? The academics. You know what I mean? That's naturally where they're going to suffer. But a lot of these guys that do understand that this is going to be the last stop, they take full advantage of it, but it's going to be hard for them because the time constraints on them. And I see it a lot, and it's just a shame that a lot of these kids think that it's, this is the sport I grew up loving, and then they see that it's a business, and they don't like that aspect.
We're going to take a quick break here. We're going to be back on the other side with more from Uriah McClain, talk a lot more recruiting and the process that goes involved with that. Stay with us here on the South Jersey Sports Report. Kind enough to stop by and spend some time with us here is Uriah McClain, who works with local high school athletes and their parents in terms of the recruiting process, and really some great information we're getting out of him. We're going to try to keep him on board here for a little bit longer and talk more about that. Uriah, during the break we were talking about just some of the misperceptions kids have and even parents have about the ability of their kid. How important is it to really get a fair assessment of what their kid can do? You don't want to see parents overreaching into trying to get their kids in Division I level when they're maybe a Division II talent or Division III talent. How important is that to kind of And how difficult is it to get a fair assessment and to convince them that, hey, maybe your kid isn't Division I, maybe he'd be do better at a Division II college?
It's really a difficult conversation to have, because when little Johnny has been, the superstar since he was 5 years old, and now he gets to the high school level, but he's only 5'8", that's the one thing that parents have to really remember. Like, when they're talking about a Division I athlete, they have a size-speed combo that is really kind of genetically rare.
Right.
They're not your average high school student. And that's not to say that little Johnny is not a great football player, but it only goes so far until that talent and the genetics actually kind of take over. So one of the things that I'd like to talk to them about is, listen, I'm not the guy that's going to tell you yes or no onto a scholarship, but I am the guy that says, listen, go out to a bunch of different camps, see how you stack up against kids that are in your region, but more so your state, and then nationally, because that's really what the competition is. It's no longer just about Atlantic County. It's about how good are you nationally. And that's what they don't really kind of see, which is, how does my kid stack up physically versus the rest of the country? And then you have to talk about the academics, which is going to be even more important piece, because can your kid even accept this offer if it was given to them?
Like they say, you can't put in what God left out, right?
Amen. Amen.
Talk a little bit more about the academics and, high school athletes, especially in this day and age where they are doing so much in the off season. A lot of these kids are playing, 2 off seasons in their particular sport to try to get that Division I scholarship and all that stuff. How important are the academics? I think people have a misconception that there's a ton of money out there for athletics, when in reality you can get a lot more money towards your college education through academic scholarships.
Absolutely. One of the things that you have to recognize, that 1% of all high school student athletes are going to get a full athletic scholarship. And like you mentioned, more so, there's more money available for the academics. The problem is that this year the academic standards has risen to 2.3 as far as your core GPA, and a lot of student athletes don't even understand what that means. They come in, they say, oh, Mr. McLean, I have a 3.0. And that's with gym included, shop included.
Right.
But when you strip it down to the math, science, social studies, and English, you realize that their GPA is a 2.0. Well, that alone will disqualify you from even being able to accept an athletic scholarship. And then these kids want to go to schools like Notre Dame, UNC, which are high academic institutions.
Mm-hmm.
They won't even make it academically when they get there. And that's why you see issues like UNC has had in the past with cheating. Why do you think? Because these kids aren't ready for that. They're not built for that. You know what I mean? They're going up against the kids that are nationally the best academically. And you're just going to slide some average student in there? It's not going to work.
Yeah, when you think about it in that respect, academically, some of these institutions, they're almost recruiting on the academic side, and that's what you're going up against as an athlete. I mean, people don't realize it that way, that the academic side is just as competitive as the athletics in terms of getting the most high-quality students at your college.
Absolutely. And, the wild card is always the SAT. It's the one test that you can really prepare for, but a lot of kids and a lot of parents especially will say, oh, my kid's just not a good test taker. And I explained to them, the SAT is not a knowledge-based test. It is a skill-based test, meaning any skill that human beings know is a learned ability. And so I tell them that. They may or may not believe me, but I'll be honest with you. It doesn't matter if they believe me or not. The SAT is going to be there no matter what.
Right.
The ACT or SAT is going to be there. And if your kid doesn't match up nationally and they don't hit basic standards and they don't understand the sliding scale, meaning the relationship between GPA and the SAT, a lot of them are in for a rude awakening, because you'll have a kid with maybe a 2.5 GPA, which is great as far as being able to qualify, but then they'll have a 750 on the SAT, and it's just not going to cut it.
We're talking with Uriah McClain, who does a lot of work here locally with high school athletes and their parents, trying to get them prepared for the college process, the recruiting process. Uriah, what's the biggest misconception among parents in terms of the recruiting process overall?
A lot of them believe that their kid is top 25 talent level. And what they have to understand is, like, they need to go to cities like Los Angeles, like Houston, and see what it looks like. When you go down to Florida, your perception of what Division I athlete means changes completely.
Yeah.
When you see a kid that's 6'2" that can run, a 4.3, legit 4.3 that is, and jump 42 inches, you've never seen anything like that. And those kinds of athletes are really rare, and that's what they don't realize, which is, your son's or daughter's athletic ability just may not stack up nationally. and it's not something that you should be ashamed of. It's just something that you have to recognize and see where you fit in terms of, all right, well, maybe Division I's not the deal for me, but there are Division 1A schools that offer full athletic scholarships, Division II schools that can offer you scholarships. And if that's not the case and you want to continue, there are the Division III schools or even the Ivies that are available for you to play at. You just have to kind of get an honest assessment from, I believe, your coach at first, and then you take that to the regional tournaments and different showcases that are available for student athletes, and you got to go against the best and see where you stack up.
Yeah, I mean, we saw some guys locally taking the Ivy route. You know, C.J. Lafregola from St. Joe's, Pat Darcy from Holy Spirit. So there are different options out there for kids. In terms of the recruiting process, how difficult is it for a parent to? And I think this is part of something that parents need to hear, and it might not be easy for them to hear, but I think they need to really listen to their kids in terms of what's going to make the kid happy. I mean, you know, as a parent, sure, you want your kid to go to University of North Carolina or Notre Dame or whatever, but, you know, who knows? Maybe a kid might be more happy at Shippensburg or something like that, or, you know, some school in upstate New York, you know, where they feel comfortable on the campus. How important is that for a parent to really have their ears open to what the kid is reacting to when they're out on these visits and some of the things that they like about a school, don't like about a school?
Sometimes I see kids that are, you know, marginal talent-wise, and they get into some of the schools that they want to get into. And they get there and they realize that they're in over their heads. But remember, the academics are going to be high at many of these competitive schools. In addition to the fact that, you know, if the kid is going to be, he's been a star his whole life, or she's been a star her whole life, and then they get onto a team and they're third and fourth string, a lot of times their egos can't handle it. They were the best of the best, and that's all they've been told. And then they get to the next level, and then what happens? They realize that the all-state player from California is now, you know, running the show, and you're just along for the ride. You know, a lot of these guys can't handle, you know, the pressures that come along with the positions that they go to, or the school and the expectations from the community. Oh, you got into University of South Carolina. That's amazing. That's amazing. And then you realize that, you know, I didn't see you last week. Well, that's because I'm buried on the depth chart. You know, and if you would have gone to perhaps maybe a JMU or a school like that, you would have had the playing time because you're just a notch below. You're not quite as physically big or maybe as talented. And that's really the difference between, in my opinion, between a Division I player and a 1A player, which is going to be maybe 2 inches and 25 pounds. But sometimes that makes all the difference.
I think another thing that I wanted to get into was a lot of these kids today, they're so used to playing. They're the star on their high school team. They're the star on their travel team. And a lot of them say, you know, I want to go to a school where I can play right away. And they may choose a school that's not necessarily a good fit for them because they can play as a freshman. I think some of these kids should step back and say, hey, it's not a bad thing to sit for 1 year, maybe 2 years, if I'm going to end up playing, you know, 2.5 years of varsity sport at that school, if it's going to be a school where I'm comfortable and I'm thriving academically, thriving socially.
Absolutely. I think that one of the things that a lot of players forget is that they can, you know, get a redshirt year in which they're able to develop themselves physically. They're able to take time to learn the playbooks, to understand how to train properly. Not every high school has college coaches, you know, with a college coach backgrounds on their team. So a lot of these kids don't go in fully prepared, and they think they're going to play right away, so they do choose the wrong school perhaps, instead of thinking to themselves that if I stay in this program, perhaps I'll get bigger, stronger, faster this next year, and then I'll be able to really compete. And that's really important that they recognize that there are options out there.
How much of that is the parents saying, oh, my kid's not going to sit in college, he's a star of the high school team, you know, I want him playing right away. You know, do you see in the work that you do you see a lot of pressure from the parents on the kids, and how do the kids react to that?
I think that the pressure comes mostly from the parents, because the community now is looking at this kid to perform, and not only just the local community, but the wider community, because now you're a national athlete and all eyes are on you. And so a lot of times these parents want their kid to go out there to perform for different reasons. But I think it's kind of one of those things that all parents want to see their kids be successful. The truth is that not all of them are going to have that experience. They're just not.
We're going to take a quick break here. Hopefully, Uriah will stick around for a few minutes.
Absolutely.
All right, we're going to talk a little bit more on this subject. I know we're spending a lot of time on this, but I think it's very important as we go into the summertime and getting ready for another school year to kind of go over some of this stuff and give parents some good insight. So stay with us here on the South Jersey Sports Report. McLean, he's a guy who works with area high school athletes and their parents in terms of the recruiting process and getting everything squared away with some of these kids. And a couple of really good segments. We're going to keep him on for a couple more minutes until we get some coaches from the Atlantic Shore 14-year-old Babe Ruth team. They're going to stop by in a few minutes here, so we're going to talk a little bit more with Uriah just about the recruiting process. And Uriah, I know you've worked closely with Cedar Creek, and wanted to talk a little bit about Amir Mitchell. Obviously, everyone around here knows him. Highly recruited wide receiver from Cedar Creek. He's going to be a senior this year. Tell us a little bit about the recruiting process with him. I mean, I know it's got to be overwhelming for a guy like that who is a top 50 recruit nationally. You know, I'm sure he has an entire box full of letters and, you know, all kind of coaches calling him, visiting him. How overwhelming is that for a kid who's, 17 years old?
It has to be tremendously overwhelming, but fortunately for him, his brother, Damon Duwop Mitchell, was able to kind of help guide him a little bit through this process, and he kind of saw it up close and personal. And I think that was a tremendous help for him. The process, as far as I understand, when Old Dominion was first in offering, and then it was Florida State, and Florida State pulls one of those deals where it's come in, look them up and down, tell them to turn around, and then you're offered. You know what I mean?
Wow. Really?
But just they want to validate the tape, what they saw on tape. Is he as big as they thought? What kind of person is he? Does he communicate well? Those are little things that a lot of kids don't really think about. But the coach has to like you. They want to like you as a person, right, as well as, a student athlete. And that's part of the process. And I think that, when you get letter after letter, it has to be something that really does feed your ego. But at the same time, he's always been such a hard worker and so humble about the process that I think that that's why even more offers came. And I think now he's narrowed it down to, Michigan and Ohio State. Mm-hmm. But again, they love the way he approaches the game. He is an animal. In every sense of the word, he is a savage.
No doubt. Yeah. How much does that help having a guy like Tim Watson as his head coach, a guy who played high level, had a chance at the pros, and really knows what it takes to be successful on the next level? That's got to be a huge advantage for him.
Watson is truly the real deal as far as the coach is concerned. He knows the ability that he has, but he's such a different kind of a coach. He's so focused on the development as men, making sure that the academics are taken care of. It's not just talk with him. He's a classroom teacher, which is a lot different than a lot of other coaches. And the thing is that he cares very much about his academics, but he also knows that, every player is one injury away from being just another student athlete.
Right.
And that's kind of the thing that we, preach in the area is just, listen, you're just one injury away. So you have to really kind of just take it in stride and prepare for that next phase. And that's the thing about Watson, which was, he was humbled in his life, in his career. Mm-hmm. And I think that all pays off because he has been there, he's seen it up close and personal, and he made a lot of the mistakes that he's asking them not to make. So he has a lot of credibility, and they listen, they trust him, not just because he's 6'5", 500.
Yeah, when Tim Watson speaks, you listen, right?
Amen.
We're talking with Uriah McClain about the recruiting process. He does a lot of work. Remind our audience about what it is you do, and talk a little bit more about the P10 program.
I work with student athletes on the academic side and also the physical development side with my course. It's p10course.com. And again, it's a program that is in athletic facilities, and it's also in classroom settings as well. Part of it is working on their academic skills as far as the SATs are concerned, and also when it comes to developing as an athlete, showing them the traits of elite athletes. Talking to them about what it takes to build that mental toughness that's necessary to compete on a high level. Talking to them about failure and its relationship to success. Making sure that these kids understand the entire process of becoming just a better overall person in general. Somebody that can handle adversity and that's not going to, cower under pressure. Right. That's the biggest thing I see today.
What are some of the most common questions you get from parents about the recruiting process? What do they want to know most about?
They want to know about the money. They want to know where it comes from, how much they can expect. And part of it is that no matter whether you're well off or not, college is a huge expense. And a lot of people don't really look at it that way.
Yeah, I mean, some of these colleges, you're talking about Drexel or, some of these, high-level city institutions, you're talking $30,000, $40,000, sometimes even more than that.
That's a BMW per year, and the difference is that you're not going to ever drive the thing,
Right.
but you're going to make a huge payment, and a lot of people don't realize that the payment is due up front. You're not going to pay this over time. Even if you get a student loan, it's going to be 10 years of your life of $800 a month,
Yeah.
and they don't get that. And part of it is like, listen, if you choose to go to X, Y, and Z university and take no money because you want an opportunity to play a sport, you might want to rethink that if so-and-so university is going to offer you even half the money
Right.
and then give you the academic monies that we talked about before. Because now your whole ride is covered, even though it's not an athletic scholarship. Who cares? You're getting the money
Right.
that's going to allow your kid a better opportunity to not be buried financially in the very near future.
Mm-hmm. We're talking with Uriah McClain, does a lot of work here locally with area high school student athletes and their parents in terms of getting them prepared for the college recruiting process. What, in terms of from the parents' perspective, what's the best advice you have for them in terms of handling all this? Should they think about bringing somebody like yourself on board? It's got to be such a tough thing to handle as a parent. You're talking two parents both working. The kids have their sport, their off-season training. There's not a lot of time to really sit down and understand all this stuff.
The reason that I got into it was because I had heard too many stories of, my Uncle Joe or my cousin was a Division I player, 10, 15 years ago. And I just look back and I smile because I'm just like, listen, the game has changed completely in that short amount of time. The process is not the same. Hiring somebody like myself or finding somebody that knows the process is really kind of essential, in my opinion, because they're going to help guide you through it. And the process is always changing. It's never going to be static. It's going to constantly evolve. And a lot of these people have to understand that if they want to give their kid the best opportunity, will be around programs that send their kids to these types of institutions. You don't want to be the kid coming from a head coach that's never sent a kid Division I. Why? Because he has no idea about the process, has no relationships with coaches, and that's what a lot of these programs are selling out here. And it's a valid point. You need to be around people that know the game and also that have players that can come back and tell you in a very real way what it's like to go to the next level, what it's like to have to train like that. When you see certain players come back home and they have no neck now and they're 25 pounds heavier, and you're just like, I thought you were massive before, and now the game has changed. Sam Madden down at Georgia. I just watched this kid develop over time. I've worked with him for years, and he's at University of Georgia. Well, guess what? You're working hard, but he has one of the world's greatest trainers in Chip Smith working with him. In addition to the training he's getting at the University of Georgia, he wants to be a pro, and he's going to do whatever it takes. And part of it is finding people that can help get you into that position.
What are some of the most common mistakes that parents make when they enter this recruiting process? Is it just starting to gather information too late? When should they start thinking about kind of corralling all this information?
They need to start right away. If you have an athlete that is a high level talent and you know that he has or she has the potential to be something special athletically, you have to start showcasing and going to different events, meeting different coaches, and getting your name out there so that you have an opportunity to build relationships, because ultimately that's what's going to allow you to get the opportunities. If coaches don't know who you are, you're not going to get recruited. And sometimes, there's too many stories of, a coach was watching a tape and saw another kid on the tape that he wasn't recruiting, and you just get lucky. Well, you don't want to leave your future to chance.
Right.
So you want to go out there and showcase yourself, because it's about exposure. And the more coaches you see, the more opportunities you're going to have. And that's what I believe. So you have to kind of put yourself in position in order to get noticed. You can't just hope that somebody sees your highlight tape on YouTube. It's just not going to happen. The 100 hits that you have, that's half of it's your own kid. So you need to make sure that you go out
buddies,
there. Right,
right?
absolutely. And you need to go out there and make sure that the right people are seeing it. And part of that is being proactive. You can send an email to a coach. You can contact them. You can see if there's interest there. And a lot of times they'll invite you to a camp. When you get an invite, you better go. And a lot of kids will be like, oh, I'm not interested in this university. Oh, I've never heard of them. Listen, that Division I scholarship might not pan out. So you better go visit so-and-so coach at so-and-so university,
right? Because
that guy might be the one that saves your behind later on, because when all the other offers that you thought were coming never come.
How difficult is it for parents and athletes to kind of sift through the things that coaches are saying when they're recruiting them? What's real, what isn't? Because a lot of times, you might think you're the apple of this coach's eye, and you get there and there's 4 other first basemen there, and you're like, wait a minute, I thought I was getting recruited to be the starter, and the next thing you know, you're on campus day 1, and you got to beat out 3 other guys for that spot.
Absolutely. I hear it all the time. Coach loves me at this position and says I'm going to be a star. You get down there and all of a sudden, you go from playing quarterback to playing wide receiver, and you've never played the position before. But the expectation is you're going to do what's best for the team, and you better really be on board with that. If you know that a coach is, has oversold promises and you've heard stories like that, you better pay attention, because more often than not, that's the way that coach is. And so a lot of these kids, if they don't have relationships with players from different leagues and different organizations, that's where you miss information like that. So you want to have a network, and you want to be able to have real stories and examples to give them, so they have more information to go on to make better decisions. This coach jumps around every 3 years. Well, guess what? That means he's not going to be there for your senior year.
Right.
So you better pay attention to that. You know what I mean? If the coach is older, maybe ready to retire, don't fall in love with the coach. Fall in love with the program, because once you do that, then you'll start to understand that, this program has stability. They're going to bring in somebody good. Just like USC, they're going to bring in a top-notch coach. You're never going to be left out there.
Right.
But that's kind of the point. You don't want to go to upstart university with a rising star coach, and then he leaves you, and then you're kind of, you're just out there.
Yep. A lot of great information here from Uriah McClain. Like to thank him for stopping by, hanging with us for about 45 minutes. Really wanted to dive into that subject. Some great stuff. If people want to contact you and get more information, how can they do that?
They can reach me at my email address, or find me on p10course.com. My email address is Uriah, URIAH .McLean, MCCLAIN @gmail.com.
Awesome. Thanks for stopping by, Uriah.
Thank you for having me.
Some great information. I think a lot of parents will be glad to hear about all this stuff, and really appreciate you coming by and kind of diving into that subject and breaking things down for us.
Thanks for having me.
Enjoy the rest of your summer, and we'll see you around at some of the football games.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. That was Uriah McClain from the P10 program. Check it out if you can. And we'll be back in a few minutes here with some coaches from the Atlantic Shore 14-year-old Babe Ruth team. They're getting ready to go to Arkansas for the World Series, so stay with us.